Admiral Zektar of the Krillian Empire stared at the holographic display floating before his command throne.
The blue-green planet rotating slowly in the projection looked peaceful, almost inviting. Its single moon cast gentle shadows across continents that seemed ripe for conquest. According to their intelligence reports, this world called Earth housed a primitive species that had barely mastered space travel beyond their own solar system.
How many of them are there? Zektar asked his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Vorth.
Approximately 8 billion sentient beings, Admiral, Vorth replied, his scaled fingers dancing across the control interface.
They call themselves humans.
Our scouts report they have basic nuclear technology and some crude spacecraft, but nothing that could threaten our fleet. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind.
8 billion primitives against the might of the Krillian war machine? It would be over before it began.
The Krillian Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade alone, each victory adding to their growing reputation as the galaxy's most feared military force.
What about their military capabilities? Zektar inquired, though he was already planning the celebration feast. Laughable, Vorth said with obvious disdain. They fight among themselves constantly.
Our analysts count over 200 separate nations on their world, many in active conflict with each other.
They use chemical propellants for weapons and metal projectiles.
Some still fight with bladed weapons in certain regions. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light combat vessels.
Around the bridge, other officers chuckled at the absurdity. The Krillian Empire possessed technology that could glass entire continents from orbit. Their personal armor could deflect most known energy weapons, and their warriors were bred for combat from birth.
These humans sounded like children playing with sticks. Sir, another voice called from the communications station.
We're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. Should we respond?
Put it through, Zektar commanded, settling back to enjoy what he assumed would be pitiful pleas for mercy. The main screen flickered, and, suddenly, a human face appeared. The creature had pale skin, dark hair, and small eyes that seemed to focus directly on Zektar despite the vast distance between them. It wore what appeared to be a military uniform covered in colorful patches and metal decorations.
This is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said in a steady voice. We know you're out there. We've been tracking your fleet since you entered our solar system 3 days ago. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the Krillian bridge crew. Their ships used advanced stealth technology that should have made them invisible to primitive sensors.
We're prepared to discuss the terms of your surrender, General Chen continued.
You have 1 hour to respond before we consider your presence an act of war. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence.
Then, Admiral Zektar began to laugh, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center.
Soon his officers joined in, their amusement building to a crescendo. Did that creature just demand our surrender?
Zektar gasped between fits of laughter.
A primitive that hasn't even left its own star system is threatening us?
Perhaps they don't understand what they're facing, Lieutenant Commander Vorth suggested.
Should we demonstrate our power? A single plasma lance could destroy one of their cities.
No, Zektar said, wiping moisture from his eyes. I want to see what these humans do when faced with superior force.
Begin the invasion.
Send the first wave to their largest population center.
Make it dramatic.
I want them to understand exactly how outmatched they are.
3 hours later, 1,000 Krillian assault ships descended through Earth's atmosphere toward the sprawling metropolis the humans called Tokyo. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of reducing buildings to molecular dust. The pilots expected panic, chaos, and rapid surrender from the terrified population below. Instead, they found organized resistance. The first sign that something was wrong came when Lieutenant Drakmore's ship suddenly lurched sideways as something struck its starboard engine. Through his cockpit window, he saw a thin contrail streaking away from a building below. Command, this is Strike Leader Drakmore. I'm taking fire from the surface. These primitives actually hit me with something.
Impossible, came the reply from the command ship. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields. But, even as the words were spoken, more contrails rose from the city below. Sleek missiles, moving faster than expected, began impacting Krillian vessels throughout the formation. While most were deflected by energy shields, a few found weak points or overwhelmed defenses through sheer numbers. Drakmor watched in disbelief as the ship to his left suddenly exploded in a brilliant fireball. Then, another. And another. How are they doing this? He transmitted to his wingman. These weapons shouldn't be able to. His transmission cut off as his own ship shuddered under multiple impacts. Warning lights flashed across his console as primary systems began failing. Through the chaos, he could hear his squadron leader screaming orders, but half the voices that should have been responding were silent. From his command throne aboard the flagship, Admiral Zektar watched the tactical display with growing concern. Red icons representing destroyed or damaged ships dotted the screen like scattered drops of blood. In the first 15 minutes of the attack, his first wave had lost nearly 30% of its fighting strength. How is this possible? He demanded. These are primitives. Our intelligence reports said they were centuries behind us technologically. Sir, his intelligence officer called out, voice tight with stress, we're detecting massive energy signatures from across the planet. It appears the humans have been concealing their true capabilities. We're reading power sources that rival our own battleships, and they seem to be everywhere. On the screen, new contacts appeared as human installations dropped their camouflage and revealed themselves. What the Krillians had assumed were simple cities were revealed to be massive fortress complexes. Mountain ranges opened to disgorge weapons platforms. Ocean surfaces parted to reveal submarine-launched defense systems that shouldn't have existed. They were ready for us, Zektar realized with growing alarm. But, how did they know we were coming? His answer came in the form of another transmission from General Chen. This time, her image appeared alongside detailed technical schematics that made Zektar's blood run cold. The schematics showed exact specifications of Krillian ship design, weapon systems, and even classified tactical doctrines. We've been watching your empire for quite some time, Admiral Zektar, General Chen said with a slight smile. Did you really think you were the only species in the galaxy capable of espionage? We've had agents embedded in your civilization for over 20 years. We know everything about your military capabilities, your tactics, and your weaknesses. The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. Impossible. Our security protocols would detect any alien infiltration. Would they? Chen's smile widened. Tell me, Admiral, how well do you really know your own crew? Zektar spun to look at his bridge officers, suspicion suddenly clouding his thoughts. But they all looked exactly as they should, scaled, reptilian, unmistakably Krillian. You see, Chen continued, humanity has a particular talent that your species lacks. We're exceptional at adapting, at becoming what we need to be. Some of us are very good at pretending to be other things. On cue, Lieutenant Commander Vorth stepped forward. As he did, his appearance began to change. The scales seemed to melt away, revealing pale human skin beneath. His reptilian features softened into those of a middle-aged human male with graying hair and tired eyes. Hello, Admiral, the human said in perfect Krillian. My name is actually Commander Michael Torres, Earth Intelligence Division. I've been serving on your crew for 3 years, and, I must say, your coffee is terrible. Chaos erupted on the bridge as security officers drew their weapons, but Torres was already moving. With speed that seemed impossible for someone who had been pretending to be a different species, he disabled 3 guards and activated something on his wrist. Immediately, a shimmering energy field surrounded him. Personal shield generator, he explained casually as plasma bolts harmlessly struck the barrier around him. Human technology. You might want to surrender now, Admiral. This is just the beginning. As if summoned by his words, explosions echoed through the flagship's hull. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power systems fluctuated. Sir, the damage control officer shouted. We have explosions throughout decks 7 through 12. It's like the ship is being sabotaged from within. Because it is, Torres said matter-of-factly. Did you think I was the only one?
Humans have been infiltrating your empire for decades. We're currently on about 60% of your ships in this fleet. We've been very patient, very thorough.
Admiral Zektar felt his world crumbling around him. The most powerful military force in the known galaxy was being dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive savages.
How had this happened?
Why, he asked, his voice barely a whisper.
Torres' expression grew serious. Because, Admiral, you made the mistake that every conqueror makes. You assumed that strength meant the ability to destroy. Humans understand that true strength lies in the ability to survive, to adapt, and to turn your enemy's power against them. We've been preparing for this day since the first time we detected your empire's expansion. We knew eventually you would come for us. The tactical display now showed a completely different picture. Krillian ships throughout the fleet were reporting system failures, internal explosions, and mutinies.
Meanwhile, what had appeared to be a defenseless planet was revealing military capabilities that rivaled or exceeded anything in the Krillian arsenal. Your empire has conquered 17 worlds, Torres continued.
But, you did it through overwhelming force against unprepared enemies. Humans have been at war with each other for our entire recorded history. We know every trick, every strategy, every way that violence can be applied. And, more importantly, we know how to fight dirty. Through the viewport, Zektar could see human ships rising from what had appeared to be empty space.
They had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind planetary debris, anywhere that Krillian sensors wouldn't detect them. The trap had been perfectly laid.
We could have destroyed your fleet the moment you entered our system, Torres said quietly. Our deep space monitoring stations detected you 3 months ago. But, we wanted to send a message. Not just to you, but to any other species that might be watching. The Admiral's hands trembled as he gripped his command throne. What message?
Torres looked directly into his eyes, and, for the first time, Zektar saw something that chilled him to his core.
It wasn't hatred or anger. It was calm, calculating determination.
The message is simple, Torres said.
Humanity can be your greatest ally or your worst nightmare.
But, if you come to our world as conquerors, if you threaten our families and our freedom, then you will learn what it truly means to fight a species that has turned warfare into an art form. You will discover why, in all of human history, no enemy that has truly threatened our survival has ever lived to tell about it. The lights on the bridge flickered again, and Admiral Zektar realized that his mighty flagship was dying around him. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the desperate voices of his fleet commanders as ship after ship reported critical failures. In less than 4 hours, the most powerful military force in the galaxy had been reduced to scrap metal by a species they had dismissed as primitive.
But, the humans weren't finished with them yet.
Commander Torres stepped back as Admiral Zektar slumped in his command throne, the weight of defeat crushing down on the once proud Krillian leader.
Around them, the flagship's bridge had become a monument to human tactical superiority.
Half the crew lay unconscious from Torres' precisely placed strikes, while the others stood frozen in shock, their weapons useless against his personal shield.
You want to know the really beautiful part about all this? Torres asked, his voice carrying the tone of someone explaining a particularly elegant scientific principle. We didn't just infiltrate your military. We've been inside your entire civilization for decades.
He touched something on his wrist device, and the main display screen shifted to show images from across the Krillian Empire. Government buildings, research facilities, military academies, even the Imperial Palace itself. In each image, Krillian officials were removing what appeared to be sophisticated disguises, revealing human features beneath. Meet the real power structure of your empire, Torres said with evident satisfaction. Over the past 20 years, humans have gradually replaced key figures throughout your government and military hierarchy.
Your Minister of Defense? Human. Your Chief of Naval Operations? Human. 3 of your 7 sector governors? All human. Admiral Zektar's mandibles clicked in horrified disbelief. That's impossible. Our genetic scanners, our security protocols, are designed by scientists who report to humans, Torres interrupted. Dr. Veklash, your chief technology officer who designed those scanners? He's actually Dr. Rebecca Martinez from MIT. She's been feeding you outdated human technology for years while making sure your defenses had convenient blind spots. The scope of the deception was staggering. Zektar realized that his empire had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, believing themselves to be the dominant predators in the galaxy while actually serving as unwitting test subjects for human strategic planning. But why? Zektar asked. Why go to such elaborate lengths? If you possessed this level of technological superiority, you could have simply conquered us directly. Torres' expression grew thoughtful. Because that's not how humans operate when we're being smart about things. Direct conquest is expensive, messy, and temporary. What we've done here is far more elegant. We've essentially been running a controlled experiment to understand your species' psychology, technology, and tactical doctrines. Every world you conquered, every battle you fought, every strategic decision you made, all of it was observed, recorded, and analyzed by human intelligence. The communications officer at his station suddenly looked up, his scaled features pale with shock. Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from across the fleet. Admiral Kortek of the 3rd Battle Group reports that 90% of his ships are either disabled or under human control. The 5th Expeditionary Force has lost all contact with their command ship. And the ground forces? Zektar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The first wave that landed in the human cities, they've gone silent, sir. All of them. Torres nodded as if this was entirely expected. Your ground troops landed in what they thought were defenseless population centers. Instead, they found themselves in carefully prepared urban warfare environments where every building, every street, every sewer tunnel has been designed for defense. Humans have been perfecting city fighting for thousands of years. We know how to turn concrete and steel into death traps. He gestured toward the display, which now showed footage from Tokyo. Krillian soldiers in their advanced armor were being systematically hunted through the streets by human defenders who seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish again like ghosts. The aliens' superior technology meant nothing in an environment where humans controlled every variable. Your soldiers are trained to fight in open space battles and large-scale warfare, Torres explained. But they've never faced an enemy that can turn an entire city into a weapon. Every window could hide a sniper. Every basement could conceal a bomb. Every civilian could be carrying advanced military hardware disguised as everyday objects. The footage showed Krillian troops taking cover behind what they thought was a simple civilian vehicle, only to have it explode beneath them. The car had actually been a mobile weapons platform designed to look innocuous until activated. This is impossible, Admiral Zektar whispered. Our intelligence reports showed that humans were divided, constantly at war with each other. How could they have achieved this level of coordination? Torres smiled grimly. Because, Admiral, you misunderstood what human conflict actually represents. Yes, we fight among ourselves. But those wars taught us everything we know about strategy, tactics, and survival. Every human conflict, from ancient battles fought with bronze spears to modern warfare with smart weapons, contributed to our understanding of how to win against superior forces. He touched his wrist device again, and the screen displayed a complex timeline showing human military evolution. When Rome conquered Carthage, we learned about total warfare. When small nations defeated empires through guerrilla tactics, we learned about asymmetric combat. When we fought 2 global wars in the span of 30 years, we learned how entire civilizations could be mobilized for conflict. Every tragedy, every victory, every strategic innovation, it all became part of our collective military knowledge. But, more importantly, Torres continued, we learned something that your empire never grasped. True strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It's about being able to adapt to any situation, to turn any environment to your advantage, and to make your enemy's strengths into weaknesses. As if to prove his point, new reports flooded in from across the fleet. Krillian ships that had seemed perfectly functional were suddenly experiencing cascade failures as hidden human sabotage programs activated. Weapon systems turned on their own vessels. Navigation computers led ships into asteroid fields or planetary atmospheres.
Life support systems began cycling through toxic gas mixtures. Every piece of technology your empire has developed in the past 2 decades was influenced by human scientists working under deep cover, Torres explained.
We didn't just steal your secrets, we helped create them. And we made sure every system had hidden vulnerabilities that only we knew about. Admiral Zektar felt a cold realization settling over him. You're not just defeating us. You're demonstrating that you've been controlling us all along. Now you're beginning to understand, Torres said. This isn't really a battle, Admiral. It's a graduation ceremony. For the past 20 years, humanity has been attending the University of Galactic Warfare, and your empire was our unwitting instructor. We learned your tactics by watching you use them against other species. We studied your technology by helping you develop it. We analyzed your psychology by living among you and observing your behavior patterns. The tactical display now showed the complete collapse of the Krillian assault force. Of the original fleet of 5,000 3 months after the collapse of the Krillian invasion fleet, Admiral Zektar stood in what had once been his private quarters aboard the flagship, now converted into a temporary embassy suite. The irony was not lost on him that he had gone from conqueror to ambassador without ever leaving his own ship. Through the viewport, he could see the sprawling structure of Luna Station, humanity's primary military installation orbiting Earth's moon. The scale of it defied comprehension. What the Krillians had initially identified as a small research outpost was actually a fortress complex that could have housed their entire invasion fleet. Weapons arrays that could destroy planets dotted its surface, while construction bays large enough to build ships the size of small cities hummed with constant activity. Most disturbing of all, everything looked like it had been there for decades, camouflaged by technology that made it invisible to Krillian sensors. A soft chime indicated someone requesting entry. Zektar turned to see Commander Torres entering, though the human now wore the uniform of the newly formed Galactic Cooperation Council rather than his previous Krillian disguise. "Good morning, Admiral," Torres said, settling into one of the chairs that had been adjusted to accommodate human physiology. "I thought you might like to see the latest reports from the integration process." He handed Zektar a data tablet containing information that would have been classified at the highest levels just months earlier. Now it was shared freely as part of humanity's effort to rebuild galactic civilization on cooperative rather than competitive principles. The former Krillian colonies have all voted to join the Cooperation Council, Torres reported. Even more interesting, many of them are reporting higher production levels and greater citizen satisfaction than they had under imperial rule. It seems that when people work for themselves rather than for distant conquerors, they tend to be more motivated. Zektar scrolled through the data, his mandibles clicking in what had become a habit when processing information that challenged his fundamental assumptions about how civilization functioned. These productivity numbers seem impossible. How are worlds that we conquered through force now more efficient under voluntary cooperation? Because, Torres replied, empire is an inefficient form of organization. You were spending enormous resources on military control, propaganda, and suppression of local cultures. Now those same resources are being directed toward actual productive activities. The tablet showed detailed breakdowns of resource allocation across former Krillian territories. Massive military installations had been converted into research facilities. Weapons factories were now producing medical equipment and terraforming tools. Soldiers had been retrained as engineers, scientists, and teachers. But the most significant change, Torres continued, is that each world is now contributing its unique strengths to the collective good rather than having their cultures suppressed in favor of Krillian uniformity. Zektar paused at a report from Nexari Prime, a world his empire had conquered 5 years earlier. Under Krillian rule, the native Nexari had been forced to abandon their traditional biotechnology in favor of standardized imperial equipment. Now their organic computing systems were being integrated with human digital technology to create hybrid systems that exceeded the capabilities of either approach alone. The Nexari biotechnology combined with human programming techniques has revolutionized ship navigation systems, Torres explained. We're seeing improvements in efficiency and reliability that neither species could have achieved alone. Similar collaborations are happening throughout the former empire. And the Krillian people? Zektar asked. How are my own species adapting to this new reality? Torres' expression grew more serious. That's actually what I wanted to discuss with you today. The integration is proceeding well overall, but we're facing some challenges with Krillian military personnel and government officials. He gestured toward another section of the tablet, which displayed psychological evaluation reports and social integration data. Many of your people are struggling with the transition from a hierarchical, conquest-based society to one based on cooperation and mutual benefit. Some are adapting well, but others are experiencing what human psychologists call purpose displacement disorder. Zektar understood immediately. Krillian culture had been built around concepts of dominance, military glory, and imperial expansion for over 1,000 years. Asking his people to suddenly embrace cooperation and peaceful development was like asking a warrior to become a farmer overnight. There have been some incidents, Torres continued carefully. Nothing we can't handle, but concerning nonetheless. Small groups of Krillian extremists have been attempting to sabotage cooperation projects or incite resistance among other former imperial species. What kind of incidents? Zektar asked, though he dreaded the answer. Last week, a group of former Krillian Special Forces soldiers attempted to seize control of a mining operation on Tektros 7. They claimed they were liberating it from human influence. The local Tektrani workers had to explain that they were actually partners in the operation and that their living conditions had improved dramatically since joining the Cooperation Council. Torres pulled up security footage showing Krillian soldiers in outdated armor being peacefully arrested by a mixed group of human and Tektrani security personnel. The Krillians looked confused and defeated, as if they couldn't understand why the people they were trying to liberate were opposing them. The problem, Torres explained, is that some of your people can't accept that the old way of doing things was fundamentally flawed. They see our reforms as human imperialism rather than genuine cooperation. Zektar studied the faces of the arrested Krillians, recognizing several as former officers under his command. They were good soldiers, loyal to their species and their traditions. But those same traditions had led them to become conquerors and oppressors without even realizing it. What do you need from me? He asked. We need you to help your people understand that this isn't about humans conquering the Krillian Empire, Torres said. It's about all of us working together to build something better than any empire could ever be. He activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the former Krillian territories. Instead of the rigid hierarchical structure of an empire, the display showed a complex network of interconnected relationships. Worlds that had once been forced to send resources to distant imperial centers were now trading freely with each other. Species that had been isolated under imperial policy were now sharing knowledge and technology. Look at what we've accomplished in just 3 months, Torres said. Medical breakthroughs from combining Alterian healing techniques with human pharmaceutical science. New agricultural methods that merge Krillian soil management with Nexari biological enhancement. Artistic collaborations that no single species could have imagined alone. The display zoomed in on specific projects that demonstrated the power of voluntary cooperation. A massive terraforming project on a previously dead world was being undertaken by a consortium of 5 different species, each contributing their unique expertise. A research station studying quantum physics was staffed by scientists from 12 different worlds, their diverse perspectives leading to discoveries that had eluded single-species research for centuries. This is what happens when civilizations choose to work together rather than dominate each other, Torres explained. The total productive capacity and creative potential is exponentially greater than what any empire could achieve through conquest. Zektar found himself genuinely impressed by the scope and efficiency of the cooperative projects. But he also understood why some of his people were struggling with the transition. For my species, strength has always been measured by our ability to conquer and control, he said. What you're showing me requires a completely different definition of strength. Exactly, Torres agreed. And that's where we need your help. You're respected among your people, even after the defeat. If you can help them understand that true strength lies in building rather than destroying, in cooperation rather than domination, then we can avoid the kind of conflicts that led to this situation in the first place. Torres gestured toward another display showing long-term projections for galactic civilization under the cooperation model.
The numbers were staggering: estimated population growth, technological advancement rates, and quality of life improvements that far exceeded anything the old imperial system could have achieved. Within 50 years, we could have terraformed a dozen dead worlds and established thriving colonies. Within 100 years, we might be ready to explore other galaxies. Within 200 years, we could solve problems like scarcity, disease, and even death itself. But only if we work together, he added. If even a small percentage of the population remains committed to the old ways of thinking, it could undermine everything we're trying to build.
Zektar understood the implicit message.
Humanity had demonstrated that they could defeat any military force through superior strategy and preparation. But building a lasting peaceful civilization required something much more difficult: changing the fundamental way entire species thought about power and cooperation.
What exactly are you asking me to do? Zektar inquired. We want you to become the first Krillian ambassador to the Galactic Cooperation Council, Torres said. Your job would be to help your people understand that joining the cooperative framework isn't surrender, it's graduation to a higher form of civilization. The offer hung in the air between them. Zektar realized that Torres was essentially asking him to become the spokesperson for everything he had once opposed. Instead of conquest and domination, he would be advocating for cooperation and mutual benefit. Instead of imperial glory, he would be promoting shared prosperity. But, as he looked at the data showing what had been accomplished in just 3 months, he began to understand that this path offered something the old empire never could: genuine progress towards solving the fundamental problems that plagued all intelligent species. There's something else you should know, Torres added quietly. The humans aren't the only species that's been preparing for this transition. We've been in communication with several other advanced civilizations that have been watching galactic politics with interest. Some of them have capabilities that make both human and Krillian technology look primitive. He gestured toward the viewport, where Zektar could see several ships of unfamiliar design docked at Luna Station. Their sleek, organic curves suggested technology based on principles entirely different from anything he had encountered. The Ascended Collective from the Andromeda Galaxy has been observing our local galactic cluster for thousands of years, Torres explained. They've been waiting for our civilizations to mature enough to join the larger galactic community. The transition from empire-based politics to cooperation-based civilization is apparently one of the key criteria for admission. The implications were staggering. Not only had the Krillian Empire been defeated by a species they had underestimated, but both species were apparently being evaluated by civilizations so advanced that they made humanity's demonstrated capabilities look elementary. So this isn't really about humans conquering the Krillian Empire, Zektar realized. It's about both our species growing up enough to join something much larger. Now you're beginning to understand the real scope of what's happening here, Torres said with satisfaction. The choice isn't between human dominance and Krillian independence. It's between working together to reach the next level of galactic civilization, or remaining stuck in the primitive politics of conquest and empire until some other species decides we're not worth preserving. Zektar looked out at the vast construction projects surrounding Luna Station and realized that humanity had been preparing not just for war with the Krillian Empire, but for admission to a galactic community that operated on principles he was only beginning to comprehend. The question was whether his own species could evolve quickly enough to be part of that future.